A sky filled with sword light descended upon the Divine General Mansion, as Li Hao, wielding his Dharma aspect and golden blade, stood like a celestial sovereign over 10,000 blades. His aura rivaled legends, stunning even Bian Rushu, who had only seen such force in her master, the revered Sword Saint. Yet this youth, still at the 15 Li realm, now echoed that same transcendent might, as countless sword shadows gathered in the heavens. Even those grandmasters who once dismissed him paused, breathless. They realized this was no longer a boy chasing glory, it was a reckoning. Li Hao's strikes surged like a divine waterfall, crashing toward his father, Li Tiangang, whose own fury ignited in response. With his divine soul ablaze and saber blazing crimson, he rose to meet the flood. But even the radiance of a grandmaster's might dimmed beneath the relentless tide. Waves of swordlight collided with ancestral rage, echoing not just the clash of steel, but of broken lineage, silent expectations, and the unspeakable weight of legacy. The sword shadow shattered like illusions torn by thunder. The endless sea's mightiest Strikon sphere crumbled beneath Li Hao's erupting divine will. Blood at his lips, vision shaking. He stood against power that once would have bent him to his knees. But the boy who once bowed to his father's sacrifice no longer knelt. Not to blood, not to fate. With a roar that shook the skies, he invoked Tiger Preshi's body, a vessel of pure force. The clash with divine power drew surprise from his father, whose saber, driven by divine soul, pressed forth. Li Hao, eyes blazing, answered with more. Paintings sealed long ago's spirit, fox, flying birds, mountains, fierce beasts merged into him like ancient truths awakening. His flesh transformed, his spirit surged. Blood-sea fierce Jiao rose behind him, coiling through crimson air, its roar halting even the divine soul for a breath. Yet still, the steps of fate pressed forward unyielding, golden, divine. Is this conversation helpful so far? Just as Li Tiangang advanced, cold and unrelenting, the second painting awakened with a roar from the Heavensome mountain map rising behind Li Hao like a divine peak, towering and immovable. The very air thickened, the battlefield shuddering under its weight, but it didn't end there. A shadow monstrous and ancient descended onto the map, its form a beast born from myth, wings folded, eyes blazing, Xianxia. The pressure tripled, wild and primal, and for a breathless instant, Li Hao stood not as a boy, but as the king of beasts, hair rising, aura devouring the sky. Even Li Tiangang, battle-hardened and unforgiving, staggered in soul. Was this really his son, the prodigy of the 15 Li realm, wild and brilliant, untamed and distant? Regret flickered across the Grandmaster's eyes, but it was too late for second thoughts. The father's blade ignited, divine light surging in his gaze as he raised his sword without mercy, determined to end what legacy could not be controlled. Such overwhelming might, colder than ancient frost and sharper than steel dreams, erupted with terrifying force far surpassing any blade Li Hao had drawn before. As the blade arced toward his soul, time seemed to fracture. Li Hao's instincts screamed, he merged body and spirit, vanishing like mist in gale winds. With the fleeting grace of a fox and the speed of 1,000 wings, he darted away but not far enough. The strike caught him mid-escape, hurling his body through the courtyard walls like broken pottery. Coughing blood, dazed but not broken, he rose from the dust as stunned eyes watched from the shadows. No time to think, only run. He fled, heart pounding, knowing pride meant little before such crushing power. Behind him, the roar of pursuit ignited the air like thunder. The heavens trembled as his foe, once a bearer of celestial might, closed in like divine judgment. Even pushing his speed beyond the realm's limits, he couldn't outrun the sound of destruction. Another strike fell crashing him into city stone, sending cracks through both ground and heart. From the rubble, Li Hao emerged only to meet a gaze that reminded him, a name does not make a person, nor does weakness erase one's worth. With blood in his mouth and a spark in his chest, he rose not just to fight, but to remember who he was beyond the blade. Do you like this personality? A father's defiant words echo across the storm. My son may lack brilliance, but he has heart. What gives you the right to scorn him? Blood trickles from Li Hao's lips as he stands dazed, haunted not by pain but by memories that aren't his, yet carved deep. Was it blood, duty, or something crueler that made him hope? The wind roars, a palm crashes down like heaven's fury, and through its shadow, Li Hao glimpses not power but cold betrayal. A mocking laugh escapes him. He runs not from weakness, but from the certainty of death. No salvation lies in his countless techniques, no escape hidden in ancient rhythms. His panels reveal nothing but the weight of everything he's learned, and all that still fails him. Behind him, the sky splits, the father figure no longer shelter but storm. Keep running then. Why stop now? The hunt is merciless, the bond broken, and the street becomes a silent stage where legacy, pride, and bloodlines collide in ruin. Is this conversation helpful so far? You thought yourself invincible, striking down your kin. Seizing fate by force, was this your limit? Li Tiangang's voice thundered as his palm descended like divine judgment. But Li Hao, bloodied and worn, no longer flinched. Instead, Endless Sea roared forth once more, unleashing a torrent of sword intent that bathed the battlefield in cold light. This time, he didn't run, there was nowhere left to go. Among shattered hopes and dying stars, he chose Defiance. Within him flickered not just fury, but memory, the small white fox, a brother's trust, the quiet warmth of shared years. In their names, he smiled. What was power if it wasn't one's own? What was a path if it merely traced another's shadow? In that moment, surrounded by collapsing sword shadows and the crushing weight of celestial force, Li Hao saw it. Not an answer, but a beginning. The world itself became his reference. The sky, the wind, the silence, these would be his teachers. Beneath the same heavens as even the immortals, he stood still and stepped forward. In that pivotal moment, every sword technique once etched into his memory dissolved into nothingness only. The pure essence of sword intent remained, unbound and untamed. Without realizing it, his breath began to flow along a mysterious path, pulsing through his meridians like a silent tide. Suddenly, a gate shimmered into view, not in the sky, but deep within his soul. The heavenly gate was not a place, but a revelation within. With a laugh full of release and fire, he kicked it open, and the power within him erupted like a storm breaking free. He recalled the verse once whispered in the listening rain tower. With the winds, the rock rises in one day, soaring 90,000 miles straight up. And indeed, he felt as though he'd pierced the heavens. Clarity struck like lightning, his body alert to every grain of falling dust, his senses razor sharp. It was not just enlightenment, it was a rebirth. Information flooded in, sword technique surged anew, and behind the Endless Sea style emerged its final form, the other shore. The sword in his grip resonated like a dragon awakened, gleaming fiercely as if echoing its master's will. All this in a mere instant time inside his mind, stretching to infinity while only a breath passed outside. As a figure descended to strike, the World Warp T's opponent's attack slowed, distant. A single arc of sword light slashed forward, bending space itself, infused with the power of laws. Blossoms fluttered before the stunned attacker's eyes. The other shore wasn't just a technique, it was a boundary between worlds, and Li Hao had crossed it. Li Tiangang's eyes flared with disbelief, but the tempered will of a former peak immortal realm master steadied him until a flash of cold steel pierced the air. Fury ignited as he bellowed and struck back with divine ferocity, yet Li Hao was already upon him, his sword slicing through flesh with a metallic hiss, a feat only possible with the divine weapon against one who had once achieved the indestructible realm. Blood spilled. Tension mounted, Li Tiangang lashed out, grabbing the sword mid-strike with the instincts of a battlefield-hardened soul. But Li Hao released the blade without hesitation and answered with a devastating fist, laced with sword intent, a fusion so pure it shattered through defenses and bone alike. Both combatants were flung apart, stunned and breathless. Li Tiangang gasped, recognizing it too late. Li Hao had ascended, crossing the threshold into the Grandmaster realm. His techniques now flowed with unpredictable grace, beyond the realm of form. Staring down his opponent with frost in his eyes, Li Hao showed no trace of regret for losing his sword. He had never clung to the pride of a swordsman, only the path he carved with his own hands. Do you like this personality? Sword or fist, whatever could strike, he wielded without hesitation. For him, weapons were mere extensions. The true force lay within. As Li Hao stepped into the Grandmaster realm, clarity enveloped him not just of mind, but of soul. Though his path as a Grandmaster hadn't fully formed, he stood at its threshold. In a world teeming with differences stars, rivers, tree-strewn harmony wasn't in enforcing order but in complementing each other. That was the meaning of the half-step, not dominance, but alignment. Enlightenment surged within as countless martial techniques converged in his mind. "Why must I confine myself?" he thundered inwardly. All rivers returned to their source. Though his sword lay broken, his spirit did not. The path revealed itself. Lacking a divine weapon, he chose the fistically formidable, equally relentless. With a roar that cracked the ground, he charged forward, merging all he had learned into a single strike, his blows like crashing rivers, his will unshakable. As his opponent ignited divine wrath, proclaiming foolish defiance, Li Hao answered not with words, but with fists forged from clarity and fire. Suppressing the searing pain tearing through his body, he awakened the dormant force of the unwithering realm, his broken flesh, momentarily mending, aura flaring like a phoenix's return. The gamble would cost him later, but in that instant, only Li Hao's unyielding gaze mattered. A surge of fury ignited Li Tiangang's palm, forged from countless battles and secret techniques, blazed like a golden sun crashing from above. As the heavens dimmed under that radiance, Li Hao roared, eyes bloodshot, unleashing the core of 7 stars, igniting. His strength surged anew, a storm of divine power swirling with reckless desperation into one final strike. Hair flying, fists blazing with cosmic law and divine force, he met the descending palm not with fear, but with ferocity, like a comet flinging itself into the sun. The explosion that followed tore the sky streets cracked, buildings shattered, people swept away. Li Qingjing scrambled to shield innocence. And when the golden palm shattered in midair, Li Tiangang stood bloodied and exposed, scars from years of border wars etched like ancient runes across his chest. His eyes burned with disbelief. Yet far behind, Li Hao crashed down like a broken star, body battered, power spent. His punchies, everything had failed to break through. Even with his newfound strength, the gap remained. And in the silence after, only the truth echoed. He was not yet enough. The difference in their cultivation realms was like heaven and earth. Li Tiangang stood above, an overwhelming force forged from war and bloodline, while Li Hao, though once considered a rare talent, now trembled beneath the weight of ancestral expectations. As that towering figure emerged like a wrathful deity wrapped in searing flame, Li Hao turned to flee, his will collapsing beneath the sheer pressure. But the roar came, "Come down to me," and the sky itself cracked open as Li Tiangang's power surged to the mid-tier of the 3 immortals, slamming Li Hao from the air. Bones snapped, flesh tore, but he refused to yield. Again he crawled, again he rose, only to be crushed by a palm strike that shattered ribs and spilled blood from every aperture. Yet amid the agony came the voice not just of a man, but of an entire lineage. Cold, thunderous, it questioned Li Hao's every choice, every betrayal, every silent grievance. What right did he have to rebel when the Li family had fed him, sheltered him, bled for him? What justice could he claim when others had perished nameless on distant borders? Poison or no poison, divine blood or not, he lived. Was that not enough? Step by step, Li Tiangang advanced, voice slicing sharper than steel, each word a reckoning of legacy and shame. And as Li Hao trembled under his gaze, still coughing blood, still on his knees, the question hung like a blade above his soul. Did power earned through lineage give him the right to abandon it all? Blood spilled from his lips as shards of broken organs slipped past his teeth, yet Li Hao still looked up, eyes gleaming with a savage grin out of madness, but defiance. Why waste words? Just end it. If I fall here, then I'm no longer one of you. The weight of generations, the name he once bore with pride, now crumbled in the silence between them. He said nothing more, not of the years denied training, not of the inheritance lost. What purpose did truth serve? You come back and demand he change this and that. Are you insane? The courtyard shook as fury clashed with fear. Fifth uncle, enough. Li Tiangang's voice cut through the tension like a sword through silk. His gaze was glacial. I've been patient long enough. You've spoiled him, let him grow unchecked. And now? He dares to raise his hand against me? His words struck harder than any blow, echoing with the weight of legacy unraveling. With just a taste of power, he's already this wild. What happens when he steps into true strength? Will even you be beneath his feet? Li Qingjing, once calm, now trembled, face flushed with rage and sorrow. You dare say we indulged him? We were all he had. What crime has he committed but surviving your expectations? His voice cracked under decades of restraint. Then silence until Li Hao emerged, bloodied, ragged, but unbowed. Fifth elder, don't break your oath for this mad dog, he muttered, his tone a blade honed by grief. Li Qingjing turned, pain etched deep in his eyes. Haoer, why won't you just yield? But the answer had long been written in the dust of shattered altars and broken swords. Li Hao stood silent, a thin smile cracking through the blood on his lips as the words, "After all, you are father and son," echoed like a mockery in the scorched courtyard. He laughed not with joy, but with despair that split the sky, and then, just as suddenly, his voice turned cold. Fifth elder, move aside! The barrier fell, revealing the face of the man who once bore the name Father Li Tiangang, eyes aflame with judgment. It's too late to repent, the man said, but surrender, and you may be spared the weight of consequence. Li Hao spat blood, snarling back, "To hell with your so-called blood ties." The years of silence, of waiting, of bruised hope collapsed in that single scream. The chains struck without mercy, twin sides biting into his shoulders like justice twisted into cruelty, dragging him like a shattered effigy to the feet of the patriarch. "You will confess," Li Tiangang growled, his fury cloaked in righteousness. But the heavens stirred, a roar cracked across the void. His name shouted like the... Li Hao stood silent, a thin smile cracking through the blood on his lips as the words, "After all, you are father and son," echoed like a mockery in the scorched courtyard. He laughed not with joy, but with despair that split the sky, and then, just as suddenly, his voice turned cold. Fifth Elder, move aside. The barrier fell, revealing the face of the man who once bore the name Father Li Tiangang, eyes aflame with judgment. It's too late to repent, the man said, but surrender, and you may be spared the weight of consequence. Li Hao Spahao. The moment Li Mushu appeared in Qingzhou, he hadn't expected to return to this. The legacy ceremony shattered, his nephew collapsed, his breath shallow, spirit dimming. In that instant, the calm he had mastered over 10 years cracked. Snow-white hair rose with no wind, fury igniting as he clutched Li Hao close. You're not alone anymore. In the warmth of that embrace, Li Hao's bruised heart wavered, whispering through bloodied lips that he'd hoped to wait until after the guest departed for a reckoning, but had failed. Brat blood, snarling back, to hell with your so-called blood ties. The years of silence, of waiting, of bruised hope collapsed in that single scream. The chains struck without mercy, twin scythes biting into his shoulders like justice twisted into cruelty, dragging him like a shattered effigy to the feet of the patriarch. You will confess, Li Tiangang growled, his fury cloaked in righteousness. But the heavens stirred. A roar cracked across the void as names shouted like the... At the heart of the Divine General Mansion, tensions erupt like a drawn sword, duty versus blood. Legacy versus rebellion. Li Tiangang, cold and unyielding, declares his post at the frontier pass is not for kin, but for the people. His words strike like iron, accusing Hao of arrogance for daring to challenge his own blood, reminding all that everything Hao possesses, talent, technique, even reputation, is a gift carved from the Li family's legacy. But Li Mushu, voice trembling with fury, defends the boy's independence, insisting that Hao's strength was forged through perseverance, not privilege. When anger reaches its peak, uncle and nephew clash, not with fists, but with words heavy as blades. Yet, even as the argument threatens to erupt into violence, Li Tiangang's icy command halts it, pointing out the crowd of martial eyes gathering like shadows hungry for spectacle, thirsty for disgrace. Beneath it all lies a deeper wound, a family once proud, now cracking beneath the weight of unspoken resentments and crumbling tradition. The war here is not just between men, but between what is inherited and what must be chosen. The courtyard trembled under the weight of disgrace as the world looked on. The Divine General Mansion, once revered, now stood bare and ashamed. You're absolutely disgraceful, rang Li Mushu's voice, eyes burning as he dropped beside the bloodied figure of Li Hao. His fury barely contained, he snarled at the silent figure of Li Tiangang. Is this how you kept your promise? The reply was cold. Li Hao had been given a chance, but in his so-called arrogance, he'd been brought low. Yet it wasn't fury that defined the moment, it was resolve. As crimson stained the stones, Li Hao whispered with the finality of severed ties, "From this moment, I bear no Li name. Tell him his son already fell long ago." Blood followed his words, but not weakness. With chains biting into flesh and dragon fangs sunk deep into bone, his pain became fuel. Li Mushu, trembling with rage and grief, tried to lift him, only to be met with fierce defiance. "Help me pull them out. I will walk." And in that moment, amid agony and fading breath, Li Hao Shonano as the fallen heir of a broken family. But as someone reborn through torment, "Tiangang, you're truly disappointing." The words cut like a blade, echoing through the courtyard as Li Mushu leaves with Li Hao, abandoning the shattered pride of Li Tiangang behind. Li Qingzheng throws a final glance, cold and wordless, before following. A heavy silence follows, filled only by conflicted gazes of onlookers too afraid to interfere. Even those who once held sway over the clan dare not speak. The battle between father and son wasn't a clash of fists, it was a storm of legacy and rebellion. Li Hao's defiance wasn't just bold, it was monumental, forcing Tiangong's hand to extremes, shattering expectations and possibly their bond. When Li Xuanli steps forward, his voice laced with cautious admiration, it's not enough to mask the damage done. The revelation lands like thunder. Li Hao, barely 14, has already stepped into the Grandmaster realm. Yet Tiangang, bloodied and breathless, dismisses the triumph with chilling resolve. Talent without righteousness is a sword without purpose. In the shadows of pride and pain, even family feels like strangers. And amidst the crumbling foundation of tradition, in the quiet chamber of the Divine General Mansion, tension coils like a serpent as Li Hao lies unconscious, his body soaked in blood, untouched by the potent medicines meant to save him. The Divine Healer, face pale with disbelief, declares something beyond understanding Li Hao's meridians, reject all healing, and yet his wounds slowly mend as though guided by an unseen force. Murmurs ripple through the room. Could this boy, broken and burned in battle, have reached the immortal state within the legendary 3 immortals? Even Li Tiangang, hardened by countless wars, is shaken by the thought. Accusations flare as Li Mushu turns on him in fury, blaming ignorance for Hao's suffering, revealing that the boy's rare physique long overlooked was never meant to follow the Li family's path. And now, in the silence that follows, the truth hangs heavy. This wasn't just a fall and recovery, it was a transformation. Inside the silent chamber, tension thickens as Li Mushu's voice cuts through the air, leaving the others stunned and wide-eyed and could fathom that the blood-stained youth lying unconscious had reached such cultivation without a single drop of medicine. Veterans of countless battles and heirs of the Li clan, usually unmoved by genius, now stood shaken, their pride quietly unraveling. Outside, shock ripples through the courtyard. Clenched fists, pale faces, unspoken fears. Li Qianfeng's reaction betrays more than rivalry. The divine healer's grim tone confirms it. A dragon fang pierces deep, threatening even the body's last instinct to survive. Urgency flares. Li Muxu demands action, and with careful coordination, the cursed fang is drawn out, followed by a surge of blood and a silent scream etched on Li Hao's tormented face. Yet the boy does not wake. Moist-eyed, Li Muxu commands all to leave, fury burning beneath his calm. I'll find out why he was treated this way, he vows, gaze like a blade. The others retreat, but Li Qingzheng lingers, eyes narrowing at Liu Yue Rong. Something doesn't add up. Meanwhile, whispers stir in the Li family enforcement hall. Did Li Hao strike back to settle a betrayal buried years ago? Li Mushu's sharp glare offers no answer, only a silent declaration. The reckoning has only just begun. Li Mushu's eyes blaze with fury as he recalled the guarded look Li Hao once gave him, a look that now made sense in the shadow of past betrayals. Liu Yue Rong tried to dismiss the tension, insisting there was no proof and blaming servants or whispered rumors. But Mushu's voice cut like thunder, denouncing her as venomous, defending Hao's character with unwavering conviction. Do you think someone like Hao would crave the position of true dragon without reason? He snapped. Laughter followed, bitter and incredulous. He stepped into the 15 Li realm at 13. Fame and glory, those are beneath him. The room froze, shocked. Even those who doubted him knew Mushu wasn't one for idle boasts. Liu Yue Rong grasped for footing, her voice trembling yet defiant. Even a prodigy desires the resources of legacy. But Mushu scoffed, undeterred. He cares not for riches or titles. When he's not fishing, he simply wanders. Have any of you even seen him cultivate? The courtyard fell into stunned silence. Whispers turned into wary stares as the truth clawed its way into their hearts she had never cultivated, never even tried. Days lost in kitchens, laughs shared with servants, a life wrapped in triviality. Was it all an act? The disbelief cracked under the weight of memory. Liu Yue Rong trembled, voice strained. If he remembers everything since the age of one, how terrifying is he? Her suspicion spiraled into fear. A boy who wore innocence like a mask, a mind sharper than they had ever known. But Li Mushu's fist slammed the table, shattering doubt. So what if he pretended? Time is a genius's greatest weapon, wasted not on deception, but sacrifice. Had he cultivated instead, would he even glance at your son? Worthy? He could have crushed him like a twig. The crowd's doubt unraveled. No one spoke. No one dared. Because in that stillness, one truth echoed louder than accusations. Li Hao never needed to compete. He had already won. Li Yuanzhao stared in disbelief as the weight of Li Hao's talent crushed all remaining doubts. This child, forged in silence and isolation, was no ordinary heir. Even Liu Yue Rong, once full of scorn, found herself speechless before the truth. Her accusations fell apart like brittle ash. The poison she once used, long thought extinct, was known only to the most ancient clans, wiped from history by divine will. Li Muxiu, with bitter laughter, declared that not even their family's sacred right to alter destiny had touched Hao. The truth rang out. Hao needed no one's favor, no twisted salvation. What he carried was not granted, but earned. Yet Liu Yurong, wrapped in pride and regret, challenged once more. Where is the proof? But her words trembled under the cold reply. This poison leaves no trace, only silence. Unless she would dig beneath sacred grounds or admit guilt herself, her last defense dissolved. In that moment, under the gaze of the entire hall, she understood Li Hao's despair. His silence, the storm behind his eyes, a monster to some, a mirror to others. In the halls of power and shattered legacy, only one truth remained. Hao never needed saving. Li Mushu's voice cut through the silence like ice cracking under pressure. With a bitter smirk, he challenged the web of lies he sensed tightening around them, warning that even exposure would leave no trace, but he wasn't fooled. Liu Yue Rong's heart skipped a beat, but her face held steady as she deflected the accusations, reminding him that power still bowed to proof. Yet Mushu pressed harder. Why would Hao accuse her if there was no cause? She deflected again, claiming ignorance, but the tension in the air only deepened. Mushu's rage flickered amused, restrained, but growing knowing the truth might lie hidden in Mount Wuliang, the only place dark enough to bury such secrets. He scoffed at the idea of divine mercy, accusing the so-called protector of orchestrating disaster only to pose as a savior. Then came the ultimatum. Her son, Li Qianfeng, must choose remain here and forsake the mountain, or return there and abandon this house forever. Her composure cracked, invoking family bonds and accusing him of using his status to crush those already grieving. But Muxu silenced her with fury, his long-held disdain for her family, erupting civil blood, schemers, unfit for their legacy. A voice from the side Chen Heffengurged moderation, reminding them this was a family matter, not one for political ruin. Muxu relented, if only slightly, knowing his words held weight, even without proof. Still, he made his stance clear. Until Hauer's truth came to light, her son would not be allowed to take a single step toward cultivation. Li Mushu's fury ignites the tense air as he corners Liu Yuerong, whose voice shakes with despair. Uncle, are we to be punished forever just because the truth remains hidden? Her plea echoes the helplessness of the innocent under suspicion, but Li Mushu, sharp and cold, demands a confession to save time. Liu Yuerong's sorrowful denial only deepens the rift. Turning his anger toward Li Tiangang, Mushu lashes out. What kind of father stands against his son in crisis? Tiangang, stone-faced, insists he punished Hao not out of malice, but to uphold respect and order. He acted rashly and I couldn't support that. Yet Musyu's rage won't relent. You talk of justice, but where is it? Show me. Tiangang's solemn vow to investigate is met with contempt. Mushu spits back the reality. Due process means nothing when power shields the guilty. Even if the truth surfaces, Liu Yuerong will lose nothing more than her title still living in comfort behind divine mansion walls. The weight of injustice hangs heavy, unresolved, and suffocating, like a blade suspended over a fractured legacy. How could Hauer possibly swallow such an injustice? The air between them crackled. So, should he just ignore the law and overcome them by force? Li Tiangang's voice was sharp as a blade. And I to stand still as they fall, mother and son, without lifting a hand? The silence was heavy. Li Mushu's frustration erupted. You command armies with brilliance, yet act blind in this. Let Hao have his reckoning, was that too much? But Tiangong's gaze was iron. He dared even strike me. That fury cannot be fed. I'll find the truth behind Hauer's fall, and justice will speak through me. No one, no matter who escapes the Li family's reckoning. His words struck deep, not a declaration, but a coronation. Though elders like Li Mushu stood tall, the weight of leadership bowed to no age. To challenge the head was to challenge the lineage itself. The air turned cold. If your father still stood, even he would grieve your path. With nothing more, Li Mushu departed, his robe slicing through silence. Even he couldn't touch Liu. Yuerong, now imperial protection wrapped around her like iron vines. Punishment required Tiangong's word, and his refusal sealed every door. Left behind, Chen Hefeng's tone was heavy. Yuerong, speak the truth. Qianfeng's place depends on it. The silence answered first. Then, Yuerong's voice, bitter like frost. Mother, you don't believe me either? The truth hovered still veiled. Still waiting. Whispers spread like wildfire through Qingju whispers of a clash so fierce it shook the heavens. A battle not between sworn enemies, but between father and son of the once revered Li family. Eyewitnesses from tea houses to temple steps shared fragments of truth and fiction. Some claimed the young heir challenged the true dragon to seize control. Others muttered about drunken defiance, ancient grudges, or hidden bloodlines dragged from northern exile. Each tale twisted reality further, feeding the city's thirst for drama. Yet no one knew the truth sealed within the Divine General's silent mansion, 2 days of stillness heavier than any verdict. When rumors finally emerged of severe punishment, outrage clashed with sympathy. Was the boy unfilial or simply broken by burdens not of his making? At Tan Palace Academy, beside the cold pond, Song Chumo's voice trembled with fury and fear as she remembered that ruthless Strikia father's wrath, a son's fall. Song Yufeng's calm words tried to console, but even he could not mask his unease. In this land where legacy binds like chains, even a child blessed by heaven must bleed before breaking free. In the solemn chambers of the mountain and river courtyard, silence hung like mist over the Divine General Mansion. Li Hao stirred from a dreamless sleep, a vision of flight, of rivers and sky merging into a single ancient character, his name. As his eyes fluttered open, the weathered face of Li Mushu greeted him with joy and worry, a quiet reunion after the storm. Outside this room, Song Chumo and Song Yufeng exchanged sharp words under veiled intentions, seeking to act, the other to restrain. He's your mentor. Why now? She asked coldly. Yufeng, with a helpless smile, replied, I bring warmth in winter, not blossoms in spring. Between them, trust cracked but did not fall. They moved forward, bound by duty but divided in will. And in the background, Li Hao's healing body bore silent witness to the weight of names, the ache of legacy, and the question neither dared to say aloud: how much of the past must one carry to walk free into tomorrow? Is this conversation helpful so far? In the flickering haze of pain and memory, Li Hao awakens to find himself back in his own room, his body wrecked, yet miraculously healing through the dormant power of the undying realm. A gift said to belong only to the immortals. Confused but alert, he tries to rise, only for blood to soak through fresh white robes as his wounds reopen. His second uncle, Li Mushu, urges him to rest, but Li Hao's soul has already stirred his divine soul, drifting silently across the mountain and river courtyard. He sees familiar faces marked by concern. Li Yuanzhao, Bian Rushou, even the quiet white fox now healed among the flower. With a faint smile, he returns to his body, thanking his uncle, though the truth of his father's betrayal lingers unspoken in the air. Li Mushu falters, trying to explain away the act, but Li Hao, eyes like tempered steel, chooses not confrontation, but clarity. He asks for his outer robe. Qingji rushes to him, relief softening her worry, but as she helps him, a question cuts through the stillness. What does Li Hao plan to do when his heart still bleeds and the scars have yet to fade? You should rest, Li Musiu said softly. But Li Hao's eyes didn't waver. A sudden question surfaced in his heart, sharper than any blade. Uncle, did my mother truly come from the great wilderness heaven? The silence that followed was more telling than any answer. Li Mushu hesitated, then asked in return, "Who told you this?" The name that slipped into the air, Tiangong, made Li Hao's brow tighten. "Please," he urged, "tell me everything." With a sigh heavy from years of buried truth, Li Mushu revealed the past, a forbidden union, a woman from beyond the heavens, a fate none could stop. The weight of it pressed on Li Hao, but the question had only begun to unravel. "You're not planning to find her, are you?" Li Mushu's voice cracked, and Li Hao, startled, responded, "Wasn't she already gone?" The moment hung in stillness. Li Mushu's face changed too late to take back the slip. "She returned to the great wilderness heaven," he confessed. "Not fallen, but beyond our reach." The truth struck harder than Li's mother still lived, yet belonged to a world closed to him. "Don't even think of seeking her," Li Mushu warned. "The path there swallows even masters." But Li Hao only smiled, quiet and resolute. "Don't worry, uncle. I won't take the step until I've earned the strength to walk that sky myself." Under the pale autumn sky, Li Hao stood quiet, no longer the boy driven by reckless ambition, but a young man tempered by silence and memory. His words to his uncle weren't empty comfort, they were his truth. The road ahead no longer glittered with glory, only the wish to live simply and fully. Over a decade had passed since he last saw her. He could wait longer. With a gentle smile, he accepted his clothes from Qingji, then turned to Li Mushu with calm resolve. "Uncle," he said, "the path of Jianghu stretches far. After today, I won't be joining you for fishing anymore." The weight of those words stilled the courtyard air. "Power, what are you planning?" his uncle asked. But Li Hao's gaze had already drifted beyond the walls. "I won't stay," he replied. Qingji gasped, and as Li Hao stepped into the courtyard, his quiet determination was met by Li Yuanzhao and Bian Rushou's stunned joy. "Brother Hao!" they called out. But Li Hao only offered a bittersweet smile. "From now on, you must cultivate well on your own," he told Yuanzhao. His eyes swept over the place. He'd called home for 14 years, the stones, the trees, the sketches he'd once made all suddenly distant. The wind whispered of partings, brushing through the withered leaves as he walked to a flower-ringed memorial, bowed low and murmured, "Uncle Lin, farewell." No more words. Only footsteps fading into frost and silence as the white fox watched from the mist. "Do you like this personality?" The little white fox dashed like a flash of snow, trembling with joy as it reached Li Hao's feet. A faint smile curved Li Hao's lips as he turned to the second master, his voice steady with farewell and gratitude. With a deep bow, he acknowledged the care given over the years. His intent clear, he would leave, and perhaps never return. The courtyard stirred with voices, Li Mushu's shocked call, Li Yuanzhao's plea, Bian Rushou's worry, but none could stop him. Then, like a storm-breaking calm, a cold voice split the air. Li Tiangang appeared, eyes sharp, his fury barely hidden. The white fox growled low, shielding Li Hao, who stood silent but resolute. Tension coiled as father and son locked eyes once more, not with words, but with unspoken battles of heart and pride. Li Hao's calm defiance was answered with anger barely held in check. As power surged silently between them, one truth remained. This was no longer a boy to command, but a man walking his own path into exile, into freedom, into the unknown. Li Hao stood unmoved, his gaze as cold as the wind that swept through forgotten courtyards. "You no longer have the right to speak to me of discipline," he said, voice low but final. "Your son fell long ago." Shock flashed in the elder's eyes, but Li Hao didn't flinch. "Have you truly forgotten? Then let me remind you. Fu returned because someone tried to erase me. A puppet of the enemy slipped past your watch, yet it wasn't your strength that stopped him." The hall fell silent. Years ago, a shadow from beyond the realm sought his life. But it was not fate or protection that saved him, it was Li Hao's own hand. "At 6, I ended him." His final words? "That I was your weakness." Seems the demon realm gave me too much credit. The crowd stiffened, disbelief rippling across their faces. No one had known. Not even the protectors who thought themselves vigilant. To overcome such danger at that age, it shattered their understanding. Even Li Tiangang, so proud and rigid, could not speak. Then Fu, recalling a recent journey, hesitated. "The twin dragons on the road to Kangyu," Li Hao replied without pause. "I defeated them." His tone never rose. No need for glory, only the quiet truth of one who had long since walked beyond the reach of ordinary judgment. Li Fu's eyes widened with sudden clarity. What he once misunderstood now struck him like thunder. He had returned to thank someone for aiding Li Hao, only to realize it was Li Hao who had silently shielded him all along. The shame gnawed at his pride. Li Hao, a youth barely seen as more than a child, had already wielded enough strength to overcome demon threats that no ordinary warrior could match. As the truth unraveled, disbelief spread while they sipped tea in peace. Li Hao had gone alone to face and defeat 2 great Zhao dragons, not even leaving behind a trace of his battle. The revelation darkened the air like a storm cloud. Those assigned to protect him had failed, and worse, the demon clan had twice launched near-lethal strikes, each meticulously calculated. Yet each time, Li Hao emerged, unassisted, unbeaten. When confronted, he didn't waver, didn't rage, he merely stated the truth. He lived not because of protection, but because of fate and his own unyielding strength. His words fell like blades measured, calm, irrefutable. Those around him, filled with guilt, shame, and disbelief, finally saw the truth. The boy they thought fragile had already crossed realms of life and fall, carrying the burden alone. If not for the twist of fate that hurled him into this world and the strange boon of his panel, Li Hao knew his journey would have ended before it began. Though the panel blocked conventional cultivation, he honed his strength in silence, farming experience and sharpening his path through hidden effort. In a family where even the least gifted could ascend with enough resources, and talents like Ninth Uncle were hailed as once in a millennium, Li Hao's quiet rise was beyond comparison. At 6, even the most honored hadn't crossed realms yet, he stood against them. But when Li Tiangang confronted Li Mushu with icy disdain, questioning his secrecy and accusing him of arrogance, it revealed a deeper fear. Had Li Hao revealed his gifts too soon, he wouldn't have drawn minor threats but calamity from those in the immortal realm. His hidden brilliance had protected him from forces that would have crushed even the most powerful guardians. As Li Tiangang faltered, Li Hao's words cut cold and true what others believed was meaningless. Only the path he carved in shadow would decide his fate. With shadows thick as blood and silence louder than war drums, the Li family debates fate as if it were theirs to command, but they forget that Li Hao, the so-called useless child, has already stepped beyond their reach. When assassins from realms beyond reason are sent after a boy barely 6, it's not fear they smell threat. Talent like Li Hao's doesn't stay hidden. If the heavens knew his truth, they'd have sent immortal forces to strike. Amid this chaos, Li Tiangang clings to legacy, barking of duty and danger like it's honor. But Li Hao, unflinching, eyes cold as winter steel, he answers not with rebellion but clarity. Your son is gone, he says, and so am I. In a world where survival is seen as luck and lineage as shackles, he chooses exile over obedience. With nothing but a broken sword and fractured past, he walks away, not to run, but to rise. This was never his home. Just a borrowed roof in a story that was never his to begin with. 14 years of hardship, every coin spent on food, clothes, and survival. Li Hao vows to repay it all. His uncle, Li Mushu, torn between fury and concern, pleads with him not to act rashly, offering sanctuary at Listening Rain Tower, a place free from control, where even the family's shadow cannot reach. But Li Tiangang erupts with righteous anger, claiming every ounce of Li Hao's power stems from the Li family's legacy, their cultivation techniques, their name, their bloodline. In his eyes, Li Hao's very existence is a product of their heritage, his glory nothing without the name Li. Tension crackles like thunder as Li Mushu roars back, accusing Tiangang of forcing Li Hao into exile and ruin. Yet amid the storm of voices, Li Hao stands still, his gaze cold as winter steel. With unshakable calm, he speaks. From this day forward, he severs the Li name, walks his own path, free from the weight of his lineage. Either they step aside or face his resolve. The confrontation ignites as Tian Gang, unwilling to yield, challenges him head-on, but Li Hao, unwavering, has already chosen his fate. Is this conversation helpful so far? The air trembled as Li Hao's aura ignited, his gaze slicing through the tension like a silent blade. Then try me. But before the storm could break, a voice cracked the silence. Enough, Tian Gang! Bloodchi surged through Li Mushu, his eyes burning with warning light, his words thunderous. Force me, and I'll shatter my oath today. I'll crush you without mercy. Li Tian Gang faltered, unable to match Li Mushu's fury, yet bitterness twisted in his heart. If not for these meddling elders, he could have straightened Li Hao's rebellious spine long ago. Grinding his teeth, Tian Gang's voice dripped with blame. This is all you're doing! Fury flashing across his face, Li Mushu retorted. So now it's my fault too. But amidst their clash, Li Hao simply turned away, voice steady and cold. Second uncle, enough. There's nothing left to say. Farewell. He walked forward, leaving the storm behind, unflinching, even as Tian Gang's killing intent exploded behind him. Tian Gang's hand rose, ready to strike, but halted when he saw that calm, distant face. His heart trembled. His voice broke. You'll regret this. But Li Hao just smiled faintly. Regret? Never, even if the heavens fall. How Wuxia, torn between anger and sorrow, rushed to block his path. Don't be reckless. Your second uncle. But Li Hao's calm gaze silenced him. Please, let me go. In that quiet plea, Li Mushu's heart broke, his words lost forever, and Li Hao, without looking back, walked on. Outside the Divine General Mansion, the streets trembled beneath the weight of countless gazes, where figures from distant lands gathered, their presence sharp as unsheathed blades. Each disciple of the White Hall of Tan Palace Academy radiated an aura of quiet arrogance, their robes whispering of states far and wide, yet their purpose singular, seeking an audience with the boy who had shaken the heavens and earth, Li Hao. Voices rang out, earnest and relentless, requesting entry to witness the one whose recent battle against his own father had echoed through the streets of Qingzhou like thunder on still water. Yet beneath their respectful words hid an urgent plea, as rumors spoke of Li Hao confined within, facing harsh discipline under his father's unyielding hand. Curiosity and concern wove together as noble scions and prodigies filled the mansion gates, their names etched into the power struggles of distant states, but now gathered here, all for one youth standing on the edge of legacy and rebellion. Within the mansion, whispers spread like wildfire as madams and elders, cloaked in history and authority, emerged from shadowed courtyards, their eyes narrowing at the sight of so many future lords and ladies pleading for the same boy their household had struggled to contain. Even those who had once doubted him now watched in The road should have ended long ago, but out of respect for her noble rank, the vice minister slowed the pace, burdened by letters from anxious scholars and the growing storm around the Divine General Mansion. Whispers filled the air. Why did Li Hao's friends wait until now to reveal themselves? Surely they had known him before his fall from grace, back when his brilliance lit up Qingzhou. But no. They came not during his rise, but in his darkest hour, after father and son clashed, breaking the sacred code of filial devotion. In the shadows of judgment, they stood beside him, true bonds unshaken by scandal. Chen Hefeng, cane in hand, saw through it all. This loyalty, rare and pure, outshone any alliance born of ambition. Then, like a bolt from the heavens, two figures descended at the mansion gates. Eyes narrowed against the grandeur of the Divine General's home, Song Yufeng and Song Kumo took in the scene. Their presence alone stirred unease. Song Yufeng's quiet laugh betrayed both frustration and relief at the Tan Palace disciples' tact. They wore no academy robes, only the jade pendants of their clans, avoiding deeper entanglement. Song Chumo's gaze sharpened, reading the radiant talismans guarding the wall's words against demons, ready to strike at a careless step. And then, with a voice calm yet commanding, Song Yufeng greeted the old matron of the mansion, his words cutting through the tension like a blade through mist. At his side, the feared guardian of the Tan Palace stood silent, her arrival raising only one. In the quiet tension of the Divine General Mansion, Chen Hefeng's sharp gaze pierced through the morning calm as she asked, "What is your purpose?" Song Yufeng, his smile calm yet unwavering, replied, "I heard whispers of Li Hao's unmatched talent and came to witness it with my own eyes if the lady would permit." Shock rippled across the gathered courtyards, their thoughts swirling like falling petals show. Had Li Hao, once merely a youth of Tan Palace Academy, risen so far, so fast? Even as the fragile peace between the Divine General Mansion and Tan Palace hung in balance, his name alone had shifted the tides. Chen Hefeng's voice softened, carefully veiling old wounds behind noble restraint. Power is resting, but if you wish to see him, you may. Song Yufeng, surprised by her easy consent, barely stepped forward before a ripple of movement drew every Gazia lone youth, walking calmly from within. His clothes still bore faint traces of blood, and at his side padded a white-furred fox, silent and loyal. Chen Hefeng's voice trembled, caught between pride and heartbreak. "Why have you come?" Li Hao met her eyes, calm and distant like a fading dream, and answered simply, "Grandmother, I have come to bid you farewell." In that moment, the courtyard held its breath shock, sorrow, and unspoken truths hanging between them while distant autumn winds carried the echoes of what could never be mended. "Do you like this personality?" With a faint bow, Li Hao spoke, his voice steady yet distant. "I leave today, and I will not return." Shock rippled through the hall as Chen Hefeng's eyes widened, unable to grasp his resolve. Li Hao's gaze swept across the room, cold and restrained, lingering briefly on Lu Yue-rong, where a flash of buried anger stirred but did not ignite his power was not enough. Not yet. As others rushed in Li Mushu, Bian Rushu, Li Yuanzhao, the old patriarch's voice rang sharp, demanding apologies and justice, but the weight of the past could not be erased by mere words. Lu Yue-rong's face twisted with defiance, clinging to the thin veil of official investigation, while Li Mushu's fury trembled just beneath the surface. Yet Li Hao stood unmoved, offering no hatred, only a calm smile masking deeper storms. He knew some debts could only be settled in the quiet aftermath of future battles. Turning to his elders, he bowed once more, his voice soft but unyielding. Gratitude for their past kindness. Farewell for now. As familiar voices pleaded against his decision, speaking of family and duty, Li Hao's lips curled in faint irony. How many times must he hear such hollow comfort? With that, the boy in black robes stepped into the unknown, carrying not only a fractured sword, but the silence of all that was left unsaid. He shook his head in silence as a lone snowflake of early winter drifted down, the world holding its breath while he stepped forward without pause. Behind him, Li Yuanzhao's voice cracked with sorrow. But Li Hao did not turn, for his parting words had already been spoken, leaving Bian Rushu stunned by the shift of fate. Then, like a thundercloud, a towering figure blocked his path. Li Tiangang's voice biting with cold, demanding where he thought he could escape to. Yet Li Hao only smiled faintly, answering that the vast world was enough for a drifter, even if he carried no name, no past, and no place to belong. The old man roared that a fallen son of the Li clan could never truly cast off its blood, but Li Hao's heart, once calm, trembled with a bitter wind, remembering that even after being reborn, his name had been twisted by the same chains. Exhaling the frozen air like a silent oath, he declared that what surname he claimed had nothing to do with him anymore, a lone soul breaking from shadows under a first snow that seemed far too soon. He shook his head in silence as a lone snowflake of early winter drifted down, the world holding its breath while he stepped forward without pause. Behind him, Li Yuanzhao's voice cracked with sorrow. But Li Hao did not turn, for his parting words had already been spoken, leaving Bian Rushu stunned by the shift of fate. Then, like a thundercloud, a towering figure blocked his path. Li Tiangang's voice biting with cold, demanding where he thought he could escape to. Yet Li Hao only smiled faintly, answering that the vast world was enough for a drifter, even if he carried no name, no past, and no place to belong. The old man roared that a fallen son of the Li clan could never truly cast off its blood, but Li Hao's heart, once calm, trembled with a bitter wind, remembering that even after being reborn, his name had been twisted by the same chains. Exhaling the frozen air like a silent oath, he declared that what surname he claimed had nothing to do with him anymore, a lone soul breaking from shadows under a first snow that seemed far too soon. No matter how brilliant you are, that alone cannot make you an unstoppable force. Once, a youth broke into the Grandmaster realm at 19, yet even a century later could only step into the immortal realm. Such is the weight of Cultivation's cruel truth. You want to stall, but I refuse. Li Hao's gaze turned icy as he demanded how this debt should be repaid, only to hear a chilling ultimatum. 3 years to replace every volume he had studied, 3 years to bring back the head of a 3,000-year-old great demon, and to guard the infamous Heavenly Gate Pass for the clan's name. As voices trembled with outrage, warning of the countless fallen there, the place stained by the bones of Li family sons, Li Tiangang remained merciless, forcing Li Hao's hand to stay and fight a war few survived. Heavenly Gate Pass, surrounded by conspirators and demons, was no mere post, it was a graveyard. Yet in that moment, Li Hao's calm shattered into a fearless resolve as he locked eyes with his father and, amidst the fury and dread, accepted without flinching. No problem. Li Tiangang's face twisted with shock as Li Hao dared to accept the challenge, then spat out a mocking laugh, calling him ignorant and fearless. warning him of the merciless Heavenly Gate Pass where 3 years might grind him to dust, vowing to pull all Li family troops away and leave him alone to taste true survival beyond their protection. Sneering that talent meant nothing before endless corpses and rivers of blood. Li Muxiu erupted in rage, demanding why not simply defeat Hao directly instead of pushing him into such a cruel fate, swearing to go with him, only for Li Tiangang to thunder back that he would confine her to the Listening Rain Tower under the True Dragon's name if she dared interfere again, leaving Mushu shaking with fury and disbelief while Li Hao stood in heavy silence, remembering what he'd heard of Heavenly Gate Passware. The Li family's children had long fallen in defense of Daiyu, and even the Emperor now pondered its abandonment, realizing Li Tiangang likely counted on this secret imperial retreat to justify leaving him behind, gambling everything on his solitary struggle. Li Hao's silence drew a scornful sneer from Li Tiangang, mocking his courage, but in that moment a faint voice brushed Li Hao's ear, shifting his gaze with quiet resolve. After a pause, he agreed to guard the Li family for 3 years, vowing that when those years passed, every ounce of shelter, food, and even the blood within him would be repaid in full, leaving no ties behind. Li Mushu panicked, trying to stop him, calling his promise madness. Yet Li Hao's heart burned with a bitterness no one could see. For how could a debt of survival demand a repayment of freedom itself? Unwilling to bow to such chains, he answered Li Tiangang's fury with icy determination, declaring he would rather fall beyond the gates than suffocate behind them, stepping forward past those who tried to hold him back. Ignoring the cries of family and strangers alike, he crossed the threshold of the Divine General Mansion without turning back, each stride severing the bonds that once claimed him, until Li Mushu stood frozen as the young man turned to leave, a chilling sense settling in that once gone, he might never return, for just as declared, he had cast away the name that once carried glory next to the royals themselves. As winter winds clawed through the Divine General Mansion, many who gathered outside of disciples, apprentices, all who had once admired him watched, stunned, as the greatest prodigy of 100 years walked away. They had come to plead for him, yet no one found the words to stop him. The harsh exchange between father and son, leaving only a bitter chill in the air. From the silent crowd stepped a lone voice, wishing him a good journey, none other than a prince hiding among commoners, now stepping forward without a trace of royal pride, drawing everyone's startled gaze. Li Hao merely nodded, cold and distant, unwilling to flaunt ties that no longer mattered. Yet, as he left, the prince's bold voice rang out, reminding him of that night's Versino worries about finding a confidant ahead, for who in this world could ever fail to know his name? Those words, heavy with both praise and sorrow, struck the mansion, silent. For tea, I won't regret it, he murmured, voice low but firm, eyes shadowed by the weight of too many memories. He will. If my words can't break his will, then the outside world will. As whispers of doubt rippled through the gathered crowd, he stood unwavering, proclaiming, in 3 years, he'll return broken, humbled, begging. He doesn't realize yet what he's throwing away, what others would give everything to possess. His gaze swept across the solemn faces before landing on Li Mushu. By order of the Li family's true dragon, none may help him in secret. Family law will punish any who defy. A final warning followed, cold as winter steel. Help him, and you'll only harm him. Do not get in my way, I will bring him back. Shock flickered across their eyes, none expecting his will to burn so brightly. Xuanli, a voice began, but faltered. You know his wounds haven't healed, and once he steps beyond Qingzhou, demons will hunt him. We are their thorn. He'll be alone, a target. But Li Tiangang remains still as stone. He's still my son. I'll place shadows in his path. If danger finds him, they will act. These 3 years aren't punishment, they are his trial. If he returns changed, we'll reconsider his place. He still has that chance. Yet Lemukshu turned away, bitterness darkening his heart. That child never cared for legacy, and if he survives, he may ascend far beyond it. Just then, as the willows swayed gently in the wind, a figure burst forth Ren Xianxia, her steps swift, chasing the boy already fading into the distance. As dusk blanketed the Divine General Mansion, Li Hao stepped forward with nothing but Resolveno's sword, no legacy in hand. Though still listed as a resident, no one dared question his silent departure. Behind him, Muxiu noticed the absence of the black sword box and rushed after him, urgency in his voice and sorrow in his eyes. You forgot, Eternal Night, he said, but Li Hao only shook his head. Tell grandmother to give it to someone else. The rejection stung deeper than steel, and Muxiu's grip on the sword box trembled. Who else in the Li family is worthy? He asked, but Li Hao had already turned away, refusing to carry anything forged in a name he no longer claimed. As he walked past old allies with a silent nod, the weight on his shoulders lifted, replaced by the quiet of self-determined exile. Behind him, footsteps echoed Ren Xianxia, still carrying her sword, choosing to follow him not for duty, but choice. "Why follow me?" he asked without looking back. "I can learn from you," she replied. "Then we fight demons together," she declared, "not as follower, but as equal." Two shadows left the Empire's gates not as heirs, but as wanderers who had chosen their own path. Snowflakes danced like falling threads of memory as Li Hao paused, then walked forward with quiet resolve. "Then let's journey together." Ren Xianxia smiled and followed, her steps light despite the cold mist thickening around them. In the storm's heart, the young man moved alone with only a white fox in his shadow for company, his sword forgotten behind. Once, he entered Jianghu with fire in his blood. Now he returned without blade, only freedom and sorrow clinging to his breath. His song cut through the silence, laughter echoing like a farewell to grief. Before the Divine General Mansion, silence reigned as those left behind watched him vanish into snow and wind. Even Song Yufeng, bound by duty, could only whisper, "Who says heaven does not welcome guests?" when it sends off a person amidst the vast wind and snow. And when Li Yuanzhao, once his brother in name, asked if Hao now walked without a father, the words struck deeper than he knew. Eyes turned cold, hearts clenched in more than beyond Rushu, whose past grief surged forward with the realization. The boy who once gave her strength now bore her old pain, yet she couldn't reach him. She ran, but the snow swallowed his trail, and he was gone. Far away, beneath the pale moonlight of Heavenly Gate Pass. The world lay vast and quiet, the boy's path stretching into the unknown uncertain, but never broken. In a secluded forest clearing at Liangzhou's edge, the flames of a bonfire flickered beneath skewered tiger meat, its rich aroma hinting at a meal far beyond what two travelers and a silent fox should need. Li Hao, cloaked in black and freshly healed from past battles, gently stroked the fox beside him, his voice calm as he murmured that the feast was nearly ready. 5 days had passed since they left Qingzhou days filled with jolting carriage rides, solitude, and silent contemplation. In that silence, Li Hao had forged something new within himself, a personal technique born of reflection, not legacy. His power was still raw, but he felt the gap between his past and present self-widening. When he called out to the forest, a rustle answered. From the shadows, a figure emerged, Bian Ruxu, her eyes wide with unspoken emotion. Her words spilled out like withheld tears. She had followed him not out of duty, but longing. "You once walked beside me, now I walk beside you." Her resolve trembled, torn between the sword and her heart. Li Hao, surprised, saw through her calm. This was not a pursuit of power, but a quiet reckoning. The fire crackled between them, casting long shadows across the earth, as two paths silently intertwined beneath the weight of everything left unsaid. By the flickering campfire, he laughed lightly, brushing aside concern with a grin that masked his weariness. "Silly girl, don't worry, I'm not like you always crying." Her face flushed, memories of childhood nightmares surfacing, but she steadied herself. "The past is past. You were there when my father wasn't, now it's my turn." His smile deepened, teasing. "This is how you repay me?" She bit her lip, silent but firm. He looked into the darkened sky, voice steady. "If you walk the sword path, walk it without hesitation. Even now we're even. You've accompanied me, and I, you." Her heart trembled. Was it truly farewell? "Really?" she whispered. "Really," he answered simply. The firelight danced across his features, soft and resolute. "Go back. Reach the summit of the sword path. When you do, come tell me what you saw at the top." She looked up, a smile, hadn't changed, yet felt a world away. That warmth, that stillness, it calmed the storm in her heart. She thought of the sword, of the unreachable peak she once feared. In a voice barely audible, she said, "Brother Hao, you're more gifted. You may reach it before me." He opened his hands with a soft smile. "That's not certain. After all, I don't even have a sword." Beyond Rushui's gaze lingered on the fading firelight, her mind still haunted by that unforgettable sword strike Li Hao unleashed against Li Tianganga, a moment of sheer brilliance carved into memory. Yet now, sitting across from her, the very same boy held no sword, nor seemed to care for one. It had always been this way, she realized, even when they were young. What did he truly hold dear? Before her thoughts could settle, an old man in a green robe drifted silently from the treetops and landed beside the fire, sniffing at the roasting tiger meat with amused praise. "No spices, yet still a masterpiece. You missed your calling as a chef." Li Hao only smiled, replying lightly that he never got the chance. As the meat finished, Feng Boping wasted no time grabbing a paw, savoring it with abandon. Li Hao, ever calm, used Ren Xianxia's sword to slice portions for the others, handing them out on mulberry leaves. When he gestured for Bian Rishu to come, she hesitated only for a breath before accepting. She had gone too long without rest, and the aroma was too enticing to resist. With a twig for chopsticks, she took one bite, her eyes widening slightly in awe. "This is incredible." In the quiet of that shared meal beneath drifting ash and memory, the swordless boy seemed farther than ever from the world of warriors, yet somehow more complete. In the quiet austerity of the sword cottage, indulgence was forbidden luxury, dulled the blade of the spirit, and distractions poisoned the sword heart. Meals were plain, desires silent. Yet now, under flickering starlight and beside a crackling fire, Li Hao defied that doctrine with a calm smile, sharing roasted tiger paw with a snowy white fox, drinking liquor passed to him by a mysterious elder whose name came with a warning, best left unspoken. Bian Rushue watched him, her heart caught between worry and wonder, seeing a youth too young for such burdens drinking as if to burn away memory. Her words of caution met only silence and a faint smile, as if Li Hao had already accepted the distance between what was expected and what must be done. The forest held its breath. As the flames danced, she fed the fire in silence, eyes drawn to the boy asleep in its warmth wounded, exiled, yet peaceful. What dreams stirred behind that still expression, she didn't know. But as night deepened, her gaze lingered in him, and on the swordless path he now walked alone. As dawn's first light crept across the sky, she turned from the fading embers of the campfire, her heart lingering in the silence. In the stillness of the forest's edge, Li Hao gave his final words, urging her to walk her own path without regret. Sword in hand, she looked back thrice, but the boy was already gone, swallowed by the road ahead. Steeling her heart, she whispered her vow, to rise to the peak of swordsmanship and one day share what she had seen. As the cypress thinned and the earth cracked like scars of past battles, the Dragon Pass Road revealed itself long, ancient, carved by emperors and forged in conquest. It stretched like a blade into uncertain lands, where the crumbling pride of Dayu met the restless stirrings of its former vassals. With only the wind as his witness, Li Hao walked forward, gaze steady on the pale horizon. An old man and his grandson appeared ahead, baskets of herbs in hand, eyes wary. Even in peace, the shadow of destiny moved with silent steps, and the road whispered of wars not yet fought. Despite the vast, empty stretch of the official road, the villagers instinctively veered away, their fear palpable even in silence. Only after confirming that Li Hao had no interest in them did the elderly man and his grandson dare to breathe freely. They trailed from afar, careful not to attract attention, yet their cautious demeanor only deepened the young swordsman's suspicions. This land was not as welcoming as it appeared. Just before they reached the threshold of Dragon Pass Road, an aged voice broke the silence. Turning, Li Hao met the old man's wary gaze, and with a slight frown, asked if the road ahead was forbidden. The elder, burdened with a basket of medicinal herbs, glanced at both Li Hao and his quiet companion, Xianxia, and guessed they were not creatures of malice, but perhaps nobles on a journey of cultivation. He warned them. Dragon Pass Road was no mere path, it was a boundary to chaos. Beyond it, not tales, but real dangers waited, not a heavenly gate, but a wasteland of rot and old blood. Dusk thickened the air, and the elder urged them to turn back, to leave before nightfall consumed the road. He took his grandson's hand and departed, though the boy couldn't help but glance back. A kilometer later, the boy whispered that the strangers had vanished. Alarmed, the old man turned, but the road was empty. He sighed, murmuring about those drawn to their own fall. Yet ahead, within the creeping mist of Dragon Pass Road, Li Hao and Xianxia continued their steady pace, eyes fixed on the unknown. As Li Hao walked silently down Dragon Pass Road, a sudden shift in his expression caused Xianxia to pause. Without a word, he picked up a rough wooden stick from the roadside, infused it with sword chi, and casually released it. The breeze it created swept gently across the path unseen, unfelt by most but far ahead. A crocodile-like demon lurking in ambush froze, as if pierced by invisible fear. In the next moment, its body split cleanly, lifeless before it could react. Li Hao smiled faintly and discarded the stick as if nothing had happened, while Ren, used to his strange silences, said nothing. As they ventured deeper, Dragon Pass Road revealed its decay-rotting corpses, bone-littered paths, demons slumbering like they owned the place. Li Hao moved through it all, with quiet, effortless power, needing no aid. His strikes swift and final. But the deeper they went, the heavier his gaze became. This road, once watched by his family, now lay abandoned, forgotten. Why had no one remained to guard it? By the time they reached the end of Dragon Pass Road, where Kanga City loomed against the cliffs and Heavenly Gate Pass waited beyond, Li Hao's silence was no longer just habit, but the echo of an inheritance unraveling. 800 years ago, this land pulsed with life-towering walls, soaring arrow towers, and crowded trade streets where horses and carriages thundered through the gates of Grand Liang's border outpost. But now, only a barren mound remains, etched with the name Kanga. Around it rise countless tents, battle flags fluttering with the ancient mark of heavenly origin, symbol of the once mighty Li family's divine general mansion. A bitter wind sweeps through the encampment, past nameless graves behind the cliffs where broken weapons, torn armor, and scattered remains are buried beneath rough wooden markers. Soldiers silently honor the fallen, carving Li family soldiers into makeshift tablets as if to anchor memory against time's erasure. In the midst of it all stands a figure in crimson armor, Li Hongzhuang. Her face is stone, her eyes colder than the wind, yet her ritual never falters. A pour of strong liquor for the departed, a final sip for herself. For 20 years, she has stood at this edge between duty and grief, from mere aide to commander, burying fragments of comrades as demons press ever closer. No names remain, only silence and storm. But her gaze never wavers, because if legacy is forged in fire, then hers is carved into the bones of the fallen. Though her third and sixth brothers had already fallen, she Li Hongzhuang stood firm, stepping into a battlefield drenched in blood and sorrow. The youngest daughter of a storied house, born beneath a legacy of 9 heroic brothers, she was meant to live gently, to marry well, to pursue the brush instead of the blade. But fate carved another path. When the 9th brother she once played with beneath the courtyard, trees fell while she was guarding the frontier. Her tears were buried in the dust of war. From that moment, she knew she would never abandon her sword. For 20 winters, she battled unyielding demon hordes beyond the pass. Her skin weathered, her hair matted in blood and grease, yet her beauty remained a ghost of her past, wrapped in steel. Her eyes, once soft as spring, now shone with the frost of stars. On this day, as her deputy reports the toll 28 foes fallen, 7 comrades lost, 12 wounded, she utters no grief, just orders. Reinforcements are promised but not yet seen. Then, like a spark in the wind, a horn sounds, the air splits, and both warriors rise into the sky. From Dragon Pass Road, shadows approach. Her blade tightens in her grip. The storm has not ended. As they near the mist-laced path, 2 watchers from Heavenly Gate Pass freeze their eyes, fixed on a lone pair approaching through the forsaken Dragon Pass Road, long swallowed by demon-claimed sands. A young man in tattered robes, calm yet unreadable, walks beside a silent woman and a pale white fox, their presence an impossibility. How could anyone survive that route? One mutters, voice tight with disbelief. Reinforcements have been scarce, and most avoid that cursed road altogether. Many have vanished, claimed by endless dunes and the things lurking beneath. Suspicion sharpens into urgency as the 2 figures rise into the sky, streaking toward the intruders. Below, wind cuts through the stillness as an ancient question hangs unspoken. Who are they, and what shadow follows?